Rise and grind. That's my personal motto right there. Uh, I think it's all about living a more entrepreneurial life, and I fondly refer to it as side hustling. So, what do I mean by that? Grinding. It can have some unsavory meanings, but whenever I speak of grinding, I'm talking about having a goal and really following through and working hard towards that goal. Whenever I talk about hustling, I'm not talking about being on the street corner, doing anything like that. I'm talking about having some sort of revenue generating activity that may be outside your day job. But before I go any further, I want to mention Brenda. Brenda actually went to the university back in the late 70s. She was unfortunately unable to get her degree, and she had a bigger challenge. She's visually impaired and is unable to see to drive. We'll come back to her story later on, but I wanted to mention it because she's got some real challenges that she's facing in terms of the workforce and trying to find a good job. So I think there's some other challenges that we're all going to be facing as time moves forward. One of the biggest is income inequality. Since her time at the university, the top 1% has grown their income and their take-home pay by over 200%. And for the lower tiers, it's been much more modest. And that trend is only continuing. Another big trend that we're going to see in the workforce over the coming years is automation. So one of the big job creators and job drivers in this country is trucking. And just a few weeks back, we had a truck that self-drove itself from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. There's companies like Google that are doing some of this. And what's that going to mean whenever all those folks that are truck drivers are then out of jobs? What's that going to mean for our workforce? And if you think about it from the perspective of safety, it makes sense, right? Those are less fatalities. It's really a good thing in that sense, but it's going to have some real significant impacts on the workforce. And it's not only in trucking. If you can make a computer or make a robot that can drive a big truck across the country and not run off the road, you can probably make a computer or a robot that can put together hamburgers and sandwiches. And so that's going to also be some real pressure on the lower tiers in terms of fast food and some of those jobs. And so what's that going to lead to? That's going to lead to wage depression. And so, we had a public speaker earlier that's, into debate and into public speaking. And, I've got Siri on my phone. I don't think anytime she's going to come for your job and be that smart to be able to do that and coach people about public speaking. But I do think if you have a bunch of truck drivers and a bunch of fast food workers that are all of a sudden out of work, they're going to flood into some of those other areas that can be automated away. And so that's something to be aware of. And the speed of change is really picking up, and that's why I think it's important to talk about side hustling and some of these things. If we take Facebook, for example, how many of y'all are on Facebook? Lots of hands, a lot of people on Facebook, right? So it started only 11 years ago. 11 years. There's about 1.5 billion people on Facebook right now. And if you combine that with WhatsApp and Instagram, some of the other properties they recently bought, that's about 30% of the global population in 11 years. Smartphones are another great example. I've got an iPhone in my pocket. That came out in 2007. Right now in 2015, we've got over 2 billion people using smartphones. So really, really rapid change. And if we look at historically, even bigger things like electricity or telephones, they took several decades to get widespread adoption. And so that speed is really changing. And all that compounds the problems that I spoke of earlier. It compounds the issues of wage depression and automation because that technology is moving so fast. But maybe you think all this is malarkey. You think, technology is always good. It's going to solve all these problems. And so there's no reason to worry about any of this. There's no reason to be involved in any sort of side hustling. And I would say the sad truth is a lot of us, our careers, our jobs, we've fallen into that, but maybe it's not something that's our true passion. And we can find more happiness by doing a side hustle, by having something outside of work, a project that we start on. So who am I to speak on this? I might have been a snappy dresser, but I'm kind of a young guy. What am I speaking of? With all this. Well, let me run through some of my own background here. So Shortly after that picture was taken, I started my first side hustle, selling candy out of my backpack. Now, I didn't make a whole lot of money, but I had a little bit of pocket change. That was good. In college, I did some more side hustling, DJing, house parties, and bars, and that continues on to this day with weddings. I got together with some really close friends, and we started a video production company. And I spent some years as a librarian. I co-authored a book, and that was a really rewarding experience. And most recently, my biggest side hustle to date, I'm starting a software company. And I really love this particular side hustle because it combines two of my biggest interests, beer and technology. It's great. It's great. So to recap, whenever I was selling candy in grade school, I didn't have any sales training. Whenever I was DJing in college, I didn't have anybody say, here's how to pick out records and scratch on turntables. Whenever I started a video production company, I didn't have years and years of training. I took a single class in college and got with our friends and said, let's go for it. And so it's been really rewarding. And those things I've learned each time. You know, I'm still doing weddings to this day. I'm booked throughout May. Sorry, can't DJ your wedding if you're getting married in May. But it's great because if I have a flat tire, if I need some car repairs, then I have a little bit of extra income that I can do that. And the same thing is true with the video production company. It took several years for it to really be successful, but we just finished a contract with a national textbook publisher. And that's a small little company in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, so that's really interesting. Now, it has not all been success. I also mentioned the book, right? So we sold about 20 or 30 copies. 20 or 30 copies, and that was really to friends and family, you know. The reviews were not great. But, you know, it was a rewarding experience. That's a bucket list thing. You know, we got a book out there. That's really cool. Another thing that I was involved in was apps. You know, you see Angry Birds, Flappy Birds. You want to get on this whole bandwagon with the apps. So I got a team together, and we started meeting, and we started working, and we're trying to build an app. And about a year afterwards, we kind of say, okay, let's see where we're at. Let's see what progress we made. And we had a lot of stuff on the whiteboard. We had a lot of notes. We did not have much code. That app was never released. But I learned a lot of things from that and from all these experiences. And that's what I want to leave you with tonight is how you can try to implement some of these things in your own lives. So one of the biggest things, one of the most important things is to just make a commitment, you know, and it can be as small as one night a week. And you might say, well, I'm going to do my side hustle. You know, I like what you're saying. I'm going to do it on Saturday mornings with my cup of coffee. Well, what happens on Saturdays? Alabama football. Also, you're likely to maybe be traveling over the weekend, and so it's hard to keep that commitment over time. But if you start a side hustle, if you work on something on Tuesday nights, most likely the only thing you're missing out on is some television, and you can catch up on that from the DVR. And then that still gives your weekend open, so if you need to spend more time and the business is starting to grow and what you're doing needs more time, you have that bandwidth to do some of that. Beyond commitment, I think collaboration is really important. You know, we all think that we've got this great idea and we want to hoard it to ourselves and somebody's going to steal my idea. Well, in my experience, that just really hasn't been the case. You do a lot better sharing your idea, working with the team, because they'll help motivate you. You know, you're then accountable to somebody else to try to carry that activity out instead of, you know, just trying to being in your basement and writing away all on your own. And also, that might make the idea better. Maybe the idea that you came in with, that you say, you know, I'm going to do this, this is what I want my side hustle to be, maybe it wasn't that great of an idea. And through teamwork and through collaboration, it can really come out more successful. Now, a little bit earlier, I talked to you a little bit about technology. And I don't want you to get the opinion that I think technology is a bad thing. Whenever it comes to side hustling in particular, it's great. You know, there used to be gatekeepers. If you wanted to be a writer, you had to have a particular genre, a particular length, and it was really hard to find a publisher to get your work out there. Well, we put out something, and it got out to the whole world. It didn't really sell, but it was still great to have your work out there, and that was really rewarding. And it's true across the board. Music, there's no more gatekeepers. You can put your work out there. And things that you may not even be aware of, crafters. If you're crocheting something, you can use Etsy, and that's a store that's specific for more craft-type materials to put your work out there. Gumroad, if you're doing any sort of digital content, maybe illustrations and those sorts of things, you can put your work out there through that tool. So I think technology, especially whenever it comes to side hustling, it's remove the gatekeepers, and there's a lot of ways and avenues for you to get your work out there and to be successful with it. I want to come back to Brenda because you may be sitting there looking at me, well, Josh, you're kind of a young guy, you're tech savvy, you're college educated, so of course you're able to do some of these things. But what about folks that are not as fortunate? They don't have a support system. How are they really supposed to do any of this side hustling? Well, as I mentioned before, Brenda didn't get a college degree. She was visually impaired, and on top of that, she had to raise 2 kids. So she could have just taken Social Security checks and tried to scrimp by and try to make rent that way. But instead, she started side hustling. She started a vending machine business. She started caregiving for the elderly. And her story has always stood out as an inspiration to me because she's my mom. And what I've seen in my own life and in my own household has made me feel that I can strive and I can achieve better. So I want to leave you with, you're not going to be able to quit your job or make $1 million if you just start side hustling. But if you were to invest or anything else, you wouldn't just have one stock. You would want to diversify. So why do we treat our careers that way? Why do we say we've got this job and it's bringing some money in and it's going to be safe forever and for eternity? Do something else. Start a side hustle and you will grow. If you grind, if you work hard, you will rise and you will grow as a person, and your community can grow as well. And I just want to leave you with that notion that you can do it. Just try. So start your own side hustle. Thank you.